All right, hey, it is 8:30 and we are live. This is Chuck Gross here and happy Wednesday. I hope everyone's having a great week. I know I am. Started off kind of rough, but I've caught up on my sleep a little bit, so that always helps. I'm doing something a little bit different with Hangouts now. Previously, I just kind of let people ask questions right up until the Hangout, and it usually flooded with a bunch of questions right before it started, and I was kind of scrambling to make sure I fact checked and did all that type of stuff. So we now have a deadline for submitting Hangout questions. The end result was that there were more questions asked in the first 12 hours after posting the Hangout announcement than I've ever gotten before. So that's a good thing. Kind of caught me by surprise. One thing that I also want to mention is that I've been trying to get out an article per week, and that's new to me. I'm working on making it a habit, and it is a struggle. I have a lot of ideas. However, if there's something that you want me to elaborate on that I've talked about on a Hangout for an article. So if I mention something and I don't go into enough detail to help you, please let me know, and I'd love to expand on it in a future article. I can't promise it would be the next article because I'm trying to work ahead. But please let me know if that's something that there's a topic you'd like to see me discuss in an article format. Because I know that Hangouts are not always easily the most digestible format for information. So we have quite a few questions asked this week, so let's get to it. One thing is I am going to respect the half an hour time limit. So if I get to questions, get too far and there's questions left, I'm just going to move them to the next one. I'd be a hypocrite if I tell everyone else to optimize their sleep and I don't follow my own rules. So I have to take care of myself as well. So I am going to keep it at a half an hour so I can get to bed on time because I still have to get up at the same time tomorrow. It's not going to change. All righty. This first series of questions comes from Brandon, and Brandon asks, how often did you need to buy new clothes during your weight loss? He wants to know, did you get new stuff as soon as you went down a size, or did you wait longer? Also, do you have any tips for clothes shopping when we're in the middle of weight loss? For example, is there stuff that will look good on someone both when they buy it and then later on after they've lost a few pounds? Brandon. So thank you for asking that. In my own initial weight loss, I tied my clothes buying with my short-term goals and my milestones. So if you recall, my short-term goals were in 25-pound increments because I had 200 pounds plus to lose. So I would reward myself with one or two pieces of clothing every time I hit a milestone, and I would basically let a series of belts do the rest. Sometimes I'd go down 2 or 3 belt sizes before getting a new pair of jeans or khakis. Since I was also trying to save money, having kids at the time, I would also wait until I could anymore. Basically, me and belts weren't going to help anymore. Once I got below 300 pounds, though, I was able to shop at Old Navy, which was a huge boon for going through clothes quickly. They have pretty cheap clothes. Yeah, they don't last forever, but their sizes do run kind of big. And they also have a tall version of their clothes. You can't normally buy the tall version in the stores, but you can find a shirt that you like how it fits or whatever, and if it's not long enough for you, you can get the tall version online. That's a huge help to me. I know as I'm getting into smaller shirt sizes like mediums, a medium is basically a belly shirt for me. It fits perfectly everywhere else, but you can see my belly button, and it's not going to fly for me. So I have to order like a medium tall. And I know that sounds like a Starbucks coffee size, but a medium tall is a thing. And it fits me just right. So in fact, the majority of my clothes are basically from Old Navy or Target for the most part, aside from the funny T-shirts that I order online, which I kind of have an addiction to. As far as what will look good when you buy it and then you lose a couple pounds, that really depends. I mean, gender is going to be a huge factor there, and it depends on how much weight you mean by a few pounds, as well as what piece of clothing it is. Clothing is really a frustrating aspect of losing weight. I won't apologize that you have to buy clothes because that's a good thing, actually. Um, you could always, donate your old clothes and also get used secondhand clothing, especially if you're going to be burning through it pretty fast. My wife has also lost more than 50 pounds since we both started. I asked her this question. She said women have a benefit in that you could buy like a flowing dress or a high-waisted skirt. That's much more forgiving. Brandon, I know we talked about Highland Games is really helpful in that regard. I know you're not going to wear a kilt to work or anything, but I used to wear my kilt around the house sometimes, and it's nice to be able to. It's Velcro, so it's as big as you can. That's the not a serious answer. Um, so I'm still experiencing this, so I can still sympathize. It's not just being able to say, yeah, I went through that. Once you get closer to your ideal or your best weight, this is more of a problem, unfortunately, because you start to run through clothing sizes much faster. And if you continue with your weightlifting and continue to progress in your weightlifting as you continue to lose weight, it's actually going to get worse. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Um, I've lost about 10 pounds so far this year. And 10 pounds ago, my jeans were tight and I didn't need a belt. And now my jeans are falling off of me and I'm using a belt and I'm like almost at the end of the belt. But I'm stubborn and cheap as hell. And given that it's almost summer, I may try to avoid buying a new pair of jeans until I'm actually down another 10 pounds and just kind of wear shorts and get through it. But that's just me. But Old Navy is a great way to go once you can get into their sizes. And like I said, I know it's kind of a weird thing to be happy or proud about, but once I had access to cheap clothes that I kind of like how they looked, it was much less of a problem. Because before that, I shopped at Casual Male XL or whatever it's called now, and their clothing wasn't cheap. So Old Navy, once you can get there, it helps immensely. So, alrighty. This next question comes from both Dan and Melissa. Dan and Melissa are married, and they're currently facing the issue that most married couples face, working together to lose weight as a team. And that issue is that men are going to lose weight much faster than women. They wanted to know how they should handle the situation because it's understandably frustrating, demotivating, and it can cause some spousal guilt. And so in this case, I asked their permission to talk about this, but Dan is losing at a much faster rate than Melissa, and that's going to cause some friction, understandably so. If you're not working with a partner while you're losing weight, this might not 100% apply to you, but relevant in many aspects because men do lose weight faster than women, and that's with all things being equal in the nutrition aspect and exercise aspect. One thing I want to start with is that comparison is the thief of joy. I didn't make that up, but I've heard it all the time. And it's normal to compare yourself to other people, but that is a thief of joy. You should take pride in what you're doing for yourself, even though it's hard not to compare yourself to other people. And I do think that applies here, especially when you're dealing with someone that you live with and they're a huge part of your life, if not half of your life. My wife and I can entirely sympathize. In the 2-year period where I lost 200 pounds, she lost 60 pounds. I was pretty much done with my journey and just needed to maintain that 200-pound weight loss to be, managing my obesity, and she still had more to go. And understandably, that was a source of conflict and friction between us. The reason why this is the case comes down to the differences between men and women, and I mean that in multiple ways. Different things are different. Men are generally bigger to begin with, meaning they carry much more muscle mass. Women carry more fat mass, as is the purpose. There's certain body fat in certain areas that women have for childbearing purposes, even if they don't plan on having children. So by having more muscle mass and being larger in frame in general, this means that men need more calories to function. Therefore, when men cut calories, they can have more to cut from. Therefore, it's easier. So if you need 2,500 calories to maintain your weight, you can eat 2,000 calories. This is just in general. Eat 2,000 calories and easily lose 1 to 2 pounds a week, no problem. Women, that's to say their maintenance is under 2,000 calories, and it starts to be a lot harder to eat less when you see your partner eating a lot more than you. And that's something I still go through now. I have a much higher calorie maintenance than my wife does. So other than that, there are hormonal differences as well. Men have higher testosterone, women have higher estrogen. This has things like more muscle mass, again, meaning higher calories needed to maintain the weight, more preference for building muscle, versus women having a higher preference to store body fat. So those are all things kind of the differences between men and women are kind of working against women in this regard. So it's not fair. The primary way that women can catch up, though, is to ensure that they're building muscle through weightlifting. If you're actively focused on building strength and building muscle, as your primary exercise, you will increase your muscle mass and decrease your fat stores, and thus you'll require more calories, making it easier on you, which in turn means you can actually eat more and lose weight faster as a result. And you're more likely to keep it off because your maintenance calories needed to maintain your weight loss are going to be higher as well. So I know there's always the concern that women are going to get bulky. The good news is that cannot happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in a calorie deficit, and it doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen for women unless they specifically dedicate their lives to that, essentially, and or are taking steroids. I've been trying to get bulky for 6 years now, and look at me, and look how well that's worked out. It's not easy. I mean, I work out probably at this point more often than most people, and I eat a lot for what I'm trying to accomplish, and it's still not happening. So there's also the genetic component to being bulky. So keep in mind, if by chance you're like the 1% of humans on Earth that can naturally get bulky by touching a weight, congratulations. If you accidentally get bulky, it's easier to become unbulky, but simply by just not lifting weights anymore, and it'll go away. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have that problem, it's still probably better to get bulky and then unbulky because you'd have the metabolic benefit and it would make your weight loss easier. But I'm going to guess that doesn't apply to anyone that's listening to this or watching. So with all that said, all of the long-term studies we have about weight loss in men and women show that on a long enough timeline, as if you keep at it and trust in the process and keep moving and not giving up, the differences do even out over time. Eventually, it might take women longer to get there, but there's no actual significant difference on a long enough timeline. So that's good news. The takeaway, though, is if you are not currently strength training, man or woman, and you don't have any medical reasons for doing so, you need to do so. Everyone should be strength training unless they have a specific good reason for not doing it. I don't say this to scare you, but there are real issues that kind of have to be considered here, one of which is loose skin. In my experience, after losing 200 pounds, my loose skin issues are almost non-existent compared to other people that have lost less weight than I have at similar heights. And I attribute that to my militant approach to weightlifting during my entire weight loss, specifically for that reason. And that I'm so thankful that I did that. I will be talking more about my loose skin in an upcoming article. It's been a difficult article for me to write because it's hard for me to talk about, but there's lots and lots and lots of reasons why every single person on earth should be lifting weights if they're able to medically, and that's other than the fact that it makes it easier to lose weight and it reduces the likelihood of loose skin. Those are two big ones. All right. And this question, or series of questions, is, I get asked this often, but it's important to talk about. This question, or hybrid of questions, kind of came from both Polly and Yasmin. Polly says, I'm curious about cardio. I noticed there's not any cardio in my plan. Can we add cardio to help with fat loss? If so, what's the best kind for fat loss? I read a lot about high intensity intervals, and many people swear by it. What is your take on it? Yasmin asked a similar question, but Yasmin also was wondering if I did any cardio. So thank you for the question, both of you. Like I said, I get to ask this question often, but it is an important question. This was something that was actually discussed in the link that I recently shared earlier in the week. I think it was earlier in the week. It was written by Dick Talens, and it was in response to that New York Times article about the Biggest Loser contestants regaining all their lost weight and then some. So please check out that article when you have a chance. If you take away one thing from the article, it's this, and you'll notice a theme here. There's a quote from the article that says, working out for the sake of burning calories is like paying off credit card debt. Working out to build muscle is like paying a mortgage. By building muscle mass, you're building an asset, not trying to move forward on a metaphorical treadmill. So this quote essentially captures my philosophy on the matter of scheduled cardio for fat loss. The core of your fat loss is going to be your nutrition, hands down. After that, your strength training is going to be the next priority for the reasons I've already discussed. Given that with the nutrition goals, the habits, the mindset changes, and the strength training, those are a lot of things to deal with and take on and work through, all while enduring the stress of those things and being in a calorie deficit and the stress of your everyday life. That's a lot to take on. Uh, there, exercise is a physical stressor. So really what it comes down to is being able to manage all of your regular everyday life stress, the stress of being in a calorie deficit, the stress of the exercise, the stress of working on your habits, the stress of working on your mindset changes, and you're wanting to add another stress on top of that of cardio. And you wonder, I don't mean you like the people that asked the question, but I mean, you wonder why people aren't able to do all these things because they're trying to do all the things at once without stopping to think about what am I actually doing well and what am I doing that's too much and actually is causing me stress and causing me to do the other things not as well as I could be. So make no mistake, being in a calorie deficit in and of itself is a huge stress, physical and mental. If you have any type of negative relationship with food, the moment you enter into a calorie deficit, they're going to be brought to the surface. The cracks are going to start to show, and you're going to have to deal with them. In my experience, looking at cardio as a means to burn calories can make that relationship with food worse. So it's a compounding problem. You do cardio, you get hungrier. You're in a bigger calorie deficit to burn fat faster. Therefore, if you have any problems with your relationship with food, the gap starts to widen, the cracks start to get bigger, and it's this gigantic cycle. And you've heard yo-yo dieting and cycle dieting. It's kind of like you're letting go of the brakes and pushing on the gas at the same time. Yeah, you're going to go faster, but you're also going to crash really hard too. So that's the reason generally why I don't specifically say do scheduled cardio. Making this a lifestyle change means it can't be suffering. If you're suffering through this to get to a weight loss goal, it's not going to last. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but if you're suffering through it, you're going to gain the weight back. It has to feel like it's doable forever, or we're doing something wrong. So you need to let me know that. So when I create a plan for someone, it really is about hacking away at the inessential stuff and focusing on what really matters and what gives you the most results for the return on investment of your time. So it's really about what can I do that gives me the most results? And then you start to add on things that give the next best result while managing your stress. And then when the stress becomes too much, you peel those things away back to a baseline of things that help you. What people tend to do that have failed with weight loss, and I say people meaning me too, is you do everything on day one, and then when all of those stresses become unmanageable with your regular stresses, you just stop doing all of them. And that puts you back at square one, or worse than square one, because that results in you eating more and gaining fat and feeling guilty about it. And you've actually gone backwards by trying to do everything all at once. And this kind of plays into that all or nothing mindset about fitness that's kind of a poison. So one point to clarify is that I mean scheduled cardio, like do X minutes of Y exercise on Z machine. So when I say don't worry about cardio right now, I mean don't do things like plan on doing 4 or 5 cardio workouts a week of 30 minutes a piece on the treadmill, or do 10 minutes of high intensity intervals every day, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you don't, that's not really necessary right now because you should focus on doing everything else first. That's not to say there's no benefit for those things, or they cannot accelerate your fat loss, because they can. But again, I want you to focus on the things that are the best return on investment of your time, meaning what can you do that uses the most precious thing you have is time. What can we use your time for that's going to give you the most results for the long term, not the short term? If there's something you enjoy, though, go and do it as often as you like. You like playing basketball? Go play basketball as often as you like. Don't call it cardio. It's play. Call it play. It's not scheduled. You don't have to do it for any number of minutes. You don't need to concern yourself with how many steps you take or how many calories you burn. Just go have fun. Enjoy the weather. Enjoy the company. Do it by yourself. Doesn't matter. If you like riding your bike, go ride your bike. Anything you could think of that is fun and you'd consider it play, or a kid would consider it play, go and do it. And it will help you lose weight, but don't hinge your weight loss efforts on that activity. Do it for fun. Do it for the mental health aspects, and enjoy it. If you're going to do something that is necessary for fat loss, I would say fall in love with the idea that weightlifting is the essential thing that you need to be doing. It's a necessary maintenance for your body, especially as you age. We lose muscle mass every year we get older, no matter what, which reduces our calorie needs, which means you're going to need fewer and fewer calories as you get older. And if you don't increase your activity or reduce your calorie intake as you get older, you're just going to gain weight. It's fact of life. That also increases your risk of injury every year as you lose muscle mass. So do you know why most people check into assisted living as senior citizens? Because they no longer have the muscle mass or strength to get off of the toilet by themselves, because that's a place where they get injured most, in the bathroom. That is never going to be me, and I will never stop weightlifting unless my doctor tells me I have to, because I never want to have to rely on someone else to get me off the toilet or to avoid injury. That's not going to be me. I realize there are people that have medical issues or other things going on that kind of puts them outside of this discussion, and that's not what this is about. But anyways, so think of the extra activities you want to do as play, and make sure you enjoy them and that you're doing them for the right reasons, not to accelerate your fat loss. If it does that, consider it an awesome side effect. So with all of that said, we can talk about adding in cardio for fat loss. If you've mastered the habits, you've mastered the mindset changes, you have your sleep under greater control than NASA does for its astronauts, your nutrition is on point 99% of the time, you feel amazing, you have extra energy, and you're rapidly moving through your strength training and gaining strength like a boss. If that describes you, let's talk. And if you want to make things go faster, that probably means you are managing all of these stresses exceptionally well, and that you are essentially entering the mastery phase. If that's you, let's do it. I would say that I am now crossing that threshold of being near the mastery phase after being consistent as hell for 8 years in a row. I'm not saying that to say that if you have to do it for 8 years. I'm a slow learner, and that's okay. Yes, I lost 200 pounds in 2 years, but it took me 6 years to learn how to maintain that 200-pound loss. So if you're not there yet, your best usage of your time and ability to manage stress is best spent on the other things that I mentioned. And the priorities may vary person to person depending on what their biggest issue is, but that's what's going to get you the results that stick around the long term. My goal here is to get you real lasting results. You can have lasting results, or you can have fast results. Some people may be able to achieve both. If you can do that, kudos to you. I'd rather get you lasting results by helping you change your mindset and habits first. So to answer Yasmin's question, I do 20 minutes of scheduled cardio per week, which is 10 minutes of steady state cardio at a high intensity after my lower body workouts. I have a coach that tells me to do that. He tells me to make them as intense as possible and to keep upping the intensity every single time that I can. But like I said, I kind of consider myself near that mastery level where I'm not going to change my food habits. I meet my calorie goal 7 days a week with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions a month all the time. And me doing 20 minutes of cardio scheduled per week is not going to, I would deal with my hunger in other ways, through mindset, through meditation, and through high volume vegetables, rather than dealing with it in other ways. So with that said, let's see, we have about 6 more minutes. The next question is from Kelly. And Kelly wants to know, how do you find your maintenance calories? Kelly has no idea what hers are or how to even find out what they are. She said, I just do what Chuck tells me, and so far it's working. So that's not nothing, but she wants to understand the process. That is a great question, Kelly. And I applaud you for wanting to get a greater understanding of kind of what's going on behind the scenes, because that's important. Always be learning, essentially, is how you want to look at it, because I learn something new every day. In general, I calculate a maintenance calorie number for someone using an equation for body mass at rest, is what it's called, or basal metabolic rate. The equation I use is called Mifflin-St. Jeor, G-E-O-R. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but that's all right. There are a few different equations developed from long-term studies, and they're used to figure out that basal metabolic rate, which means the number of calories you consume laying in a bed all day. That's just a starting point, and usually if you've been significantly overweight, it's usually incorrect, but it is a starting point. We take that number, we multiply it by an activity factor. So the activity factor would be like really active or sedentary, sedentary meaning you have a desk job. I work out 4 days a week and I routinely get 10,000 steps a day, and I still calculate my basal metabolic rate at sedentary, which means taking the body basal metabolic rate times 1.2 gives me my maintenance calories, which is somewhere between 2,600 and 2,700. So to lose weight, you reduce your calories from there. So if I want to lose weight, I eat 2,100 calories every day, and that causes a weight gain under a pound a week. So like I said, those are just estimations, and things have to kind of be adjusted based on your results. Now, it's kind of pointless to adjust them downward if you don't have the habits in place, because removing calories from your diet, like I said, is a stress, and it's going to bubble up any relationship issues you have with food, and it's going to make working on the habits and mindset stuff harder, and also making it harder to exercise consistently. So that's kind of the challenge that we face when working together, is that if we find out that your current calorie intake that you're hitting needs to be lower, it's a danger to do that unless you have everything else on point. And I know that makes it sound like it's this giant mountain to climb, and it is, but you're not doing it alone, and there is hope. You can get there. You just have to focus on one thing at a time and keep moving. So also, rather than continue to drop calories, I would rather focus on upping your non-exercise activity, and that's things like increasing the number of steps you have, parking farther away, getting up and walking around every half an hour, things like that. It's much easier. There are other ways to get a more accurate measure of your basal metabolic rate. You can do a lab test where they have you wear this helmet and you breathe into this helmet thing that's connected to a monitor, and that will tell you what your actual basal metabolic rate is. If you have easy or cheap access to that and want to do that, go for it, and then let me know. I'd love to see it. It's technically called indirect calorimetry, or calorie. So if they want to go that route, let me know. All right. This next question comes from Sean. Sean says that after hearing about all the people that influenced me on the last Hangout, he wanted to know which books I had wished I initially read when I first got started or would recommend to others. Sean, this is an amazing question. I'm going to answer it like this. If I had a time machine, but could only send back books and a handwritten note, what books would I send back to myself when I was 400 pounds and just getting started? So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to send 4 books instead of 3. So sorry. I would write a note that says, "Hey, dummy, read these." That's just self-deprecating humor. All right. So the 4 books that I would send back to my former self would be The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, The End of Overeating, Taking Control of the Insatiable American Appetite by David A. Kessler, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky, and The Fat Loss Prescription by Dr. Spencer Nadolsky. If you notice, there's only one book there, that's The Fat Loss Prescription, that is specifically addressing diet and exercise, and all the other ones are about mindset, habits, and stress management. So I hope that gives you an idea of what really matters when it comes to a long-term lifestyle change. The title of the 3 of those books are kind of straightforward, but if you're not familiar with Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, it's a self-proclaimed guidebook to stress-related diseases, and what you can really do about that. It's a really heavy read, but it's well written, so it's not boring. I almost considered excluding it because it's kind of just focuses on the biological machinery of stress. But the last chapter really does have some coping mechanisms and advice. You could say that it's that animals tend to have short-term stress, like running from a lion, but for humans, stress is like chronic and constant and all day long. And our nervous system was not intended to be stressed all day long. It was intended to be short bursts where you turn it on and then turn it off again real quickly and come down from it. But we don't do that. We're stressed all day long from when we wake up to when we go to sleep, and that leads to diseases like ulcers and hypertension, etc. So that's my recommendation list. If you read any of those books based on my recommendation, I'd love to hear what you think. All right, it is 9 o'clock, but I do want to get to this next one. So I'm kind of going to go back on my word here because it's so close, and this one's a good question. Yasmin asked a bunch of questions about how to deal with a coworker that complains daily to her about not being able to lose weight. And Yasmin has offered some suggestions like, track your food for a day, talk to someone for some accountability. But the coworker was kind of just complaining and looking for a quick fix. So Yasmin was wondering, what do you do when someone seems to be struggling and asking you for help, but then not listening to you? And it seems like they're not ready to make a change yet. So Yasmin, this is a really complicated issue, and really how you approach this is going to depend on the person that you're talking about and your relationship with them and how well you know them, and that's going to kind of direct how you approach them. So you're going to need to tailor the specifics to them as a person, but so there are in general some things you can do to help. I think the most important thing is what you're doing is leading by example. And then if they ask questions about what you're doing, you can give them the very basics. You don't want to get too far into details. Specifically that there are no quick fixes, period. There is a science behind what we're doing. This is evidence-based. There's science behind it. A transformation that lasts requires changes in diet and exercise, yeah, but it also requires habit changes and mindset changes, and those are more important than diet and exercise at first, because the habit and mindset changes lead to diet and exercise changes, not the other way around. You plenty of people that lose weight and gain it just do diet and exercise. They don't do habit and mindset, and that's why it's a yo-yo diet. So I know it's annoying, or it may be annoying, but even if they're not listening to you and they're still bugging you for advice, continue to listen and encourage them, and maybe share some of your own struggles that you've had in the past with them about your own looking for a quick fix and how you kind of overcame that and what your turning point was. And, kind of steer them slowly, one bite at a time, towards an evidence-based approach. You could show them that you care by being available to answer their questions, as it's possible that part of their journey is kind of stumbling through these questions to go from quick fix, Dr. Oz type of fitness to like the actual what science and studies show is working for people. You can give them hope by letting them know that you recognize how hard they're working to make changes, and that the struggle is kind of a necessary part, and you'd like to help them through it by helping them with their questions and support. And lastly, if they are rejecting all your suggestions or not even really listening to you, you can try active listening and try to shift the conversation to what, if all the things they've tried so far aren't working and they're still trying them and they're still not working, what else do they think they can do? What do you think you need to do? What helped you in the past that worked that you think is doable now? You can empathize with them, like, I see how difficult this is. I know it's really bothering you. I'd love to help you. I know I hear in your voice that it's really affecting your life, and that's a problem for you. What do you think you should do? How can I help you? That empathy might go a long ways, as long as they can tell that that's what you're trying to do. And with that said, even with all the effort you might put towards helping someone, you still might kind of have to draw a line. And I know that's not a nice place to be. But if it's becoming a problem or it's affecting your ability to actually do your job, and they're annoying you and they're not listening to you, it's okay to kind of draw a line and just say, I'm not really comfortable talking about this, something along those lines. You don't want to be negative towards them. You still want to try to be a nice person, but you can kind of be a little bit abrupt without being rude, I think. It's possible that they really just aren't ready for change, and that they're just complaining for the sake of complaining, because that's how they're just dealing with the stress of contemplating change but not being ready yet, and that's okay too. if they're really not ready deep down, there's nothing that you can say or do that will help them get there. That it has to come from within. They have to be ready for change, and not everyone is. I mean, there are people that have wanted to work with me before. They thought they were ready for change, but once you kind of get into the details of look, like your transformation has to happen in your head first, and if you're not ready to really evaluate what's going on in here and in here, diet and exercise isn't going to change anything for you. So that's the unfortunate truth. But it's awesome you want to help someone. It just, if they're not ready for change, there's not much you can do except try to support them until they are. So, all right. I believe that covers everything. Awesome job, everyone, asking questions well ahead of deadline. So I appreciate that. And if you had a question that I didn't answer and want it answered earlier than the next Hangout, let me know. But I will be putting up the Hangout announcement on Monday. So everyone have a great night, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.